I feel the Spirit moving in me. I feel the Spirit moving in me.
So, is there a place in your life where you're playing small? Where you're playing safe? If so, are you willing to make a different choice? Are you willing to make a choice to live full out there? To live strong? To rise strong? You know that you're an expression of spirit, right?
Yes.
Okay. Had me worried there for a second. Well, and it's kind of a big thing to recognize because a lot of people wouldn't think that's true. But in unity, we recognize that we have access to the presence of God that's everywhere in the universe. And that if it's everywhere in the universe, then it's in us also, in each of us. Maybe not the absolute fullness of spirit, but certainly we are expressions of aspects of that truth. And so, don't you want to reach that full potential? Don't you want to be the best version of yourself that you can be? So today, we're going to talk about how you can do that. Are you interested? This is the fourth talk in a four-talk series based on Brene Brown's book, Rising Strong. This is such an amazing book. I probably could have taken a few months to really talk about everything that she talks about in here. But what I'm doing is summarizing some of what I think are the key points and the real transformational pieces of it. And that's the thing. This is a transformational process. And what we're going to talk about today is not just something that we do one time. It's a process that we get to be a part of on an ongoing basis as we develop our psychological and our spiritual truth. I like this quote from Theodore Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done it better. The credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, and who in the end may know the triumph of high achievement, and when he fails, gets back up and dares greatly. One of the key ideas in this work is that we sometimes fail, right? And a lot of times when people are like, oh, not me, I never want to fail, right? If you never fail, Brene would say, then you're not really in the arena. You're not really trying to be successful if you're staying in that safe zone where you never fail. So this Rising Strong process has three parts, and we've talked about each of these parts in the last 3 weeks. The first part is the reckoning, and the reckoning happens in that place where you go, oh, something happens, and you have a reaction to it, right? Typically a negative reaction. Ever happened to you? Where you go, oh, boy, this just pisses me off, to use a Brene Brown word. And, right? So that's just the awareness starts with that reckoning. And the rumble is the part where you say, okay, so interesting. I had this reaction to this situation. Isn't that interesting? I wonder what that's about. And so today we're going to talk about the revolution, and we're going to talk about all of these steps, really, and just give you examples of them. But it's the revolution is where you're like, okay, I'm I recognize that my buttons get pushed from time to time. True for you? It's kind of the journey being in these human bodies, right? Stuff happens and we go, "Rah!" I wish that wasn't the case. So, so what we're going to talk about is how can we short circuit this process so we become more grounded, more powerful in the moment, and indeed rise strong. Brene Brown says that we are all creative beings. In fact, she says, she did a lot of research about this, and she said, what I wanted to know is who rises strong? Who gets their asses kicked on a regular basis and gets back up with more tenacity and courage? And the first thing that came to me, she says, was creative people. And this includes people in special forces, veterans, and people who must rise up as part of their job. And she says, regular people are creative too. Every day, you wake up and you walk into the dark. You do this with your life, you do this with your work, you do this with your interpersonal relationships, and sometimes you get vulnerable. And you share something that's a part of you, something you created, a thought that you had, and something that's really important to you. And she says, and sometimes it doesn't go so good, right? Because you don't always get the reaction that you would have liked, right? So Brene says it's our job to either dismiss the feedback that's hurtful or accept the feedback and to look at what is the truth in it. And in the midst of that, get back up every day, even though we sometimes get knocked down, even though sometimes we feel that failure is to get back up. And Renee says, oh God, we are all creative. You are creative. The very essence of being a spiritual being in a physical body, this gift that we have of being human is a creative existence. We get to be creative every moment because we get to choose how we're going to be, how we're going to respond to the situations in our lives. And I think that what's so beautiful about this book, this work, and the work that Unity does, it's all about changing our consciousness. It's about lifting our consciousness so we're able to change our perspective when difficult things happen and respond in love, in peace, and in joy, instead of following the train to Timbuktu or to go down the rabbit hole. Of course, none of you probably ever been down the rabbit hole? So, that sometimes something happens. Sometimes something happens in our life, and we have a reaction to that something. And so that's what we're going to look at today is what can we do when that thing happens? And, this journey that we're on about being creative is interesting. Brene Brown says, unused creativity turns into dangerous things. Unused creativity turns into dangerous things. Because if we don't use that creative essence that's within us, we turn it off. In essence, we are connected to our higher self, and then we don't always respond in the most loving and beautiful way that's within our potential if we put off being creative. And if we come from a place of getting in fear, getting in anger, responding in a negative way to a challenging situation, it creates a whole mountain sometimes of negativity. Ever noticed? You You ever had something happen to you and you just go off the charts, right? You just go ballistic, and it could be in the moment, or you could even do it within yourself and sort of have this implosion within yourself that cuts you off from the truth of who you are. The truth of it is, we are neurobiologically wired for survival, right? That's what our physical human beingness wants to do. It wants to survive, right? So often when something hard happens, we show somebody something that we created, or we share a song with them, or we share a story with them, or we share our truth with them, and they don't react the way that we anticipate that they're going to react. Our brain does a scramble to try and make sense out of it, right? It goes, okay, so this happened, and I feel this, and so I need to make sense out of this. I want to understand what happened here, right? And a story typically has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And our brains want to put all that down and make that logically into a story that makes sense so we can wrap our head around it. That makes sense? So if we say something to somebody and they make a funny face about it or give us a dirty look, our brain scrambles to try and figure out what happened here. This is what I did, this is what they did, and what does it all mean? And we can jump into a million conclusions about that. In fact, Brene calls it a conspiracy, right? Because a conspiracy is when you take a couple of facts and then you fill in the rest with fear, right? So isn't that what we do? Okay, this happened. I did this thing. I showed them this thing. Their reaction was this, and my mind goes, "Whoo, boy! I got to figure out what happened here." And does it usually do the sweetest resolution? Huh? It doesn't usually go there, does it? It builds up some fearful story that creates all kind of drama in our mind. And have you ever reacted to that person then that, did something innocent to you? And you're like, I'm going to kill that person. How dare they? The moment something hard happens, emotion gets the first crack at us. So what we can do, and what we're talking about today, is how can we, instead of reacting to that moment, how can we gather our composure and say, what's happening here, right? Instead of reacting, question, what's going on here, right? Because if a person is threatened, if you're threatened physically or mentally, what do? Fight. Oh, yes. Yeah, we do a couple things. Either we fight, or we run, or we freeze, right? That's typically the responses that we have. And how productive are those? Usually not so much, right? we don't solve anything when we... That's right. That's why some of us keep our shoes on all the time. So I'm out of here. Where's my sandals? I got to get out of here. So if we don't stop that emotional train, interesting things happen. We come out swinging, or we turn to people-pleasing, or we freeze. Not great ways to spiritually deal with a situation. So people who practice rising strong pause and ask some questions. Like, something happens. So what am I feeling? Take a breath and feel into that. Oh, wow, interesting. I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling depressed. Interesting. I'm feeling the turmoil inside of me. And then to ask, what do I need to know about this? What is happening for me? What truth can I gather from this uncomfortable position that I find myself in. We get snagged by emotion. Kind of reminds me of fishing somehow. That a fish bites on a hook, and all of a sudden, woo! It realizes there's something happening and it's being pulled around. We can do the same thing. We can take the bait in a sense, right, and snag onto that emotion, and then woo! We are caught up in it. So people who practice rising strong recognize that they have been snagged. The moment that happens, interesting, I've been snagged. It's not bad, right? I don't have to react to it. Just notice, I've been snagged. So I'm curious about that. Isn't that interesting that this situation grabbed my attention? How many of you were raised in a family where you were taught to suck it up? Right? No, don't feel your emotions. Things happen, right? It's like, just be tough. Just hang in there. It's the American way. Don't worry about your feelings. You're too emotional. Yes, right. Haven't we all heard that? And on the other hand, how many people were raised in families where it was okay to share your feelings? I don't see anyone, right? Nobody ever said, it's okay to share your feelings, right? Usually it's like, stop it! Go to your room! Who do you think you are? That's terrible. You don't have to cry.
I'll give you something to cry about.
What?
I'll give you something to cry about.
Oh, yeah, I'll give you something to cry about. That's good behavior modification, right? So the first thing we do is ask, okay, what am I feeling? What's has snagged me? Brene interviewed thousands of people, or maybe hundreds, in writing this book. I think I might have exaggerated. I think she said hundreds and I said thousands. But anyway, she interviewed a lot of people in writing this book. And she asked these people to name emotions. And how many emotions do you think people named? If she had 100, how many do you think people named?
5, 4.
Oh, you're close. 5, 4, actually 3. Wow. Happy, sad, and pissed off, right? Isn't that amazing? Because if you don't understand, if you don't have a large frame of what emotions are, how can you identify with them? I had some fun. I put this list together of emotions. Some are good, some are bad. They're both sides. But there's a couple hundred there. And if we don't realize that we can actually feel these emotions, we can feel fear, we can feel anger, we can feel surprise, we can feel disgust, we can feel amusement, we can feel awe, we can feel desire, disappointment, distress, appreciation, calmness, excitement, joy, nostalgia, romance, interest, relief, satisfaction, anxiety, awkwardness, boredom, and a whole bunch more. But if we aren't given the freedom to be able to recognize them or to know about them, how can we recognize them? So, have you ever been snagged by an emotion? No. I just thought I was probably speaking to the wrong bunch. Maybe you guys out in Facebook land, maybe hold your hand up. See, now there's some honest people out there. So, some time ago, I had a conversation with somebody who comes to Unity, and somebody that I respect a lot. And the person said, so what did you talk about tomorrow? And I said, oh, it's about this and about that. And he said, oh, that's great. I can't wait to be there and hear it. Right? So the next day comes, and I gave this talk, and I am into it. Right? It feels powerful to me. I poured my heart into it. I spent 3 days writing it, like this talk, and I stayed up and got up in the middle of the night thinking about it, and then I gave it, and it felt like a good delivery. And after the service, I said to this person, how'd you like my talk? And he kind of shrugged his shoulders and gave out a big sigh and said, I have to go. Right? So immediately, my mind made up a story about what had happened, right? I gave the talk. This was his reaction, right? So I created a conspiracy. So this certainly was what happened. Either he didn't like my talk, or he was not smart enough to understand it. I like that one a lot. Or he had something else on his mind, or he just didn't like it. Or maybe my delivery was horrible. Who knows? But I was snagged by emotions. And so I realized it. I felt the pain of that. And I was hurt, and I was disappointed. And that's the first step, recognizing that I was snagged. In the old days, I would have gotten upset. I would have taken it personally. And I have to admit, sometimes I still do. We're all works in progress, right? Things work sometime, we get through that one easily, and sometimes it's not so easy. But in the old days, I would have thought, boy, that person's a jerk. This talk is way over their head, or I guess it wasn't a very good talk. So, what story am I making up? I made up the story that the person wasn't interested, he wasn't smart enough, didn't have the spiritual depth to understand it, or I didn't give a very good talk. So based on this story, I felt very disappointed, I felt sad, I felt anger, and I had to go to the next step, which is, what do I need to know about this? And so the next day I called the person, and I said, hey, you got a minute? And he said, sure. I said, yesterday after my talk, I asked you if you liked it, and you let out a big sigh, and you shrugged your shoulders, and you said, I have to go. Now, I'm making up that you didn't like my talk, or you were angry with me, or is there anything else you want to tell me? And the person said, oh, Rev, I enjoyed your talk and thought it was very powerful. I just remember I left my phone in my car, and a friend was going to call me with some important information that I needed to respond to immediately. Oh. Ever happened to you? Brene says this happens 90% of the time. Things happen, and we make up a story about it, right? And it kind of made me think, if somebody were to come to me and say what I said to this person, this is a story that I'm making up about this. Can we clean it up? Is there anything I need to know? What happens then? What happens in our relationship? Truth, love. I'm being vulnerable, right? I'm saying, hey, I care enough about you that I want to know what's going on here, right? So immediately that person and I felt a deep connection, and we still do. And I believe it's because instead of getting angry, instead of creating a negative story, I was able to go to the person and say, what's happening here? Please tell me. Let's clean this up. Wow. And isn't it funny that it really is so simple, but we avoid it because we're afraid of what? Truth, being vulnerable, right? Wow. So, your homework for this week, which I love to give homework, and your homework for this week is for you to practice this process that we just talked about. If you get the opportunity, if you find yourself in reacting emotionally to a situation. And I also want you to practice failing. Or I want you to stretch and and do something this week that is out of the ordinary for you, right? Maybe it's cooking something totally different than what you've cooked before, right? And so it's all about taking a chance, rising strong. Go out there and knowing that you might fail and not being afraid to fail, because we're changing the way that we react, right? We're opening up that place of being more creative so that we can experience the fullness of who we are. So if someone was to do something this week that would be a little bit out of the box for you or someone else, well, let's say for you, let's keep it personal. What are some things that you would do? Go ahead and speak it out. Nobody. Well, that's the doggone thing. Well, I'm going to start this talk all over again. All right, come on, be brave.
What do you mean? I mean,
Okay, well, so what is something that you could do different that, simple as cooking a meal that you've never had before, or go to a restaurant that you've never seen before?
But what is something that you are going to do that you can say something?
yeah.
Well, what am I going to do this week? That's a good question, because I'm getting ready to leave for 3 weeks.
Well, you're flying on an airplane.
I'm flying on an airplane, but I've done that before.
Time and how much?
So, what I've had to do this week is I've had to prepare 3 PowerPoint presentations and 3 orders of services for 3 services, because I'm not going to be here for the next 3 weeks. I haven't done that before, right? And I've had to train a team of people to be able to do that in my absence. So that's one thing that I have done that I haven't done before. So how about you?
I just found out that the grain that I've been eating for years is not good for my body, so I'm
Oh.
going to try cooking a different grain. I'm not a great cook.
Yeah. Well, that's a great thing to try. Bonnie said she's going to try, and the grain that she's currently eating isn't good for your system, so you're going to try something different. That's exactly what we're talking about. So what else might you do?
I think I'm going to get myself a piece of furniture that's not made of plastic from Target.
All right, get a piece of furniture that's not made of plastic from Target. So I can see we're having some challenges coming up with something that's really good for you. And maybe you don't want to speak it out because you might feel obligated to do it. So,
I have one.
okay.
I'm going to get the name of the owners of a restaurant, and I'm going to ask for a singing gig.
Ask for a what?
I get the names of the owners or the person in charge of the restaurant and get singing gigs.
All right.
Uh,
A singing gig.
Oh, get a singing gig. That's awesome.
Hot places.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of rising strong. Taking a gift, a creativity that you have, ideally something that you love, and putting it out there and taking a chance. You might fail, but maybe not. Who knows what? This is what life is about. It's about being creative and being in the moment and testing ourselves and really stepping out in faith and doing something that's different. And there's just so many benefits to all that, because when we do something different, as we've talked about before, we create new neural pathways in our brain, which helps to keep us young and to be more vibrant. Okay, so let's do this. Let's say this affirmation together, and then we'll join together in a meditation. Let's say it together. I am rising strong because the light of truth shines in my heart. And I invite you to close your eyes. And take a deep breath. Breathing in and breathing out. And I invite you just to be in this moment and to let go of any thoughts or feelings. And just be in this moment right now. We know that this is a safe place that we've created this morning. And we know that this process of rising strong gives us the opportunity to stand in our power, to open our hearts and our minds to new ways of being powerful, new ways of stating our truth, new ways of loving ourselves. So today and this week, I invite you to contemplate on what does rising strong mean to you? And you get to play a game. And the game is to find some activity, some way of being that you can tap into your creativity. And using that creativity, do something new. It could be as simple as calling a person you've always wanted to walk with, take a walk on the beach with. It could be going to a different restaurant. It could be recognize when you're snagged and ask, what am I feeling? What's going on here? Could be going to the person that threw out the hook. Or it could just be writing the story down and asking yourself, what am I feeling? What's going on here? What do I need to know? And let's take just a moment to contemplate, to rest, and to be in the silence together. I am rising strong because the light of truth shines in my heart. And I invite you to gently bring your awareness back to this moment, to this room. Very much. Well, I invite you now to prepare your offerings to Unity on Maui, and to thank you in advance for the gifts that you give. It is indeed by your gifts that we are able to do what we do here on Sunday morning. And thank you to those of you watching on Facebook this morning for your gifts as well. And if you're wondering how to give, you can always go to our Unity on Maui website and click on our donate button there and make a safe donation that way. Or you can always send a check to Unity on Maui, 483 South High Street in Wailuku and donate the old-fashioned way that still works. And so thanks for all of you for your gifts this morning. And I know that as we give, we receive. That one of the basic principles of giving is that it is in giving that we open ourselves up to receive. And so thank you for your gifts today that help us to be able to give to you. So as we hold our gifts, let's affirm and pray together our affirmation of prosperity, which begins, through a giving heart, my mind and life overflow with the abundance of God's all-providing, infinite supply. And so it is. Namaste. Thank you, loving Spirit, for these gifts that have come to us in love. We hold them, we bless them, we give thanks for them, knowing that they move through this ministry, across this island, and out into the world. And we behold a world that's filled with love, with light, with joy, and with peace. And so it is. Namaste. Thank you. Well, these amazing flowers behind me were actually grown on this property and arranged by Kealoha.
They are beautiful.
Aren't they amazing, aren't they? Wow. And what an incredible job Kealoha does with putting flowers together. Wow.
Among other things.
Yeah, among many other things. I think anything she does is miraculous. And if you'd like to give flowers on Sunday morning, you can sign up on our sign-up sheet at the back, and let me know how you'd like the flowers donated or mentioned, and we'll mention them, and you can bring them on Sunday and take them home after the service. So Carol, come on up. Carol's speaking next week. So what are you talking about?
I will tell you. I will tell you.
Is there a switch on?
Okay. How's that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
There's a button on it.
I think it looks like it is red, so there you go. I'll try that.
How's that?
There we go.
There we go.
Here I am. And my birth was remarkable for being unremarkable. I was number 5 in a big, large Catholic family.
Oh.
Wow.
So my mom zipped off to the hospital. I was born. They sent us right home. I slept through the night, the first night. And my mom woke up in a panic the next morning. Gosh, Carol's dead. And so she picked me up and she shook me.
Oh.
And thus began a journey of light and dark, of disempowerment and empowerment, of love and fear. And through that time, I've learned the art of ease and grace. I've learned that there are 3 keys that are working in our lives, whether we're aware of them or not, to create the life we are creating. And once you understand what these keys are, then you can use them to your advantage. And I've spent over 6 decades learning this. This is the book that I was born to write. This is the message I was born to deliver. The art of ease and grace. So join us next week to learn more. Mahalo.
All right. Thank you, Carol. And many of you know, on Friday I leave for Unity Conference in Kansas City, Missouri. And I am fortunate to be able to take this lovely lady with me, Eleanor, and Kealoha, and back there, and Kailani. So this is the first time in the 10 years I've been here that any board members or congregants have gone with me to conference. And Unity Conference, it happens in Kansas City, in Overland Park, and there's usually 300 to 500 Unity people from around the world at this conference. And so it's amazing, and it's a great way of getting recharged and for all of us to see what's happening in the Unity movement right now. We are a movement that there's, I think, about 1,000 churches worldwide, something like that. Might be more than that. So we're a part of that. We're part of this larger family, and we know that we will come home with stories and insight to bring to this wonderful ministry on Sunday. So while I'm gone, I don't know, what are you trying to communicate with me? Oh, didn't I do that? I did. We got so many people that help out around here. I'm explaining this to the Facebook crowd that I'm getting these little messages, and somebody said, "Oh, you didn't do the offering, and bless the offering." I think I did. Anyway, so where was I going with all of this? Okay, so you are in good hands when I leave. Carol's going to be speaking next week. A week after that, Virgia Cantorna is speaking, and then the next week, Bonnie O'Cannon is speaking. So you're going to have a great time, and Louise is going to be here and show up and provide lots of great music, and so it'll be a great time to be here, and we'll see what happened, what the mice do when the cat's away. I know it'll be fine. You are. Yeah. It'll be a whole different party, I know. So thank you, everyone, for being a part of that. So I think, Mike Fleenor has organized this thing called Get Found in the Spirit of Unity. And I think we've about expired all the events that we have. But if you have an event that you'd like for us to participate in as a community, talk to Joy Meyer about that, and she'll get the word out. And that's Joy right there. Okay, so if you enjoyed my talk today and you're wondering how in the world you're going to remember all of the stuff that I shared with you, there is what I call a walk your talk on the back table. It's a summary of everything that I talked about today, so you can put this process to work in your life. It's a very powerful process, and I know you'll be transformed by it. So I think that wraps it up for today. Why don't we stand, and we'll say the prayer for protection, and then Louise will lead us in the peace song. So together, the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. God bless you, friends. Have a great few weeks, and I'll see you in July. Aloha.